Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
This is episode 271. Welcome back to the show. This week, we've got a great piece with illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison on the Masonic Minute. In addition, I've got a really cool piece from the Illinois Lodge of Research and some news from the Illinois Lodge of Research, not really current news, but rather something I found interesting in a past issue of the transactions for the Illinois Lodge of Research, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to take a look at that. The article as well is interesting because it is about Freemasonry as portrayed on the World Wide Web. Now, just the use of the words World Wide Web dates the article, I think. But let's have a read on this piece in just a few minutes, and then let's think about how much it's changed. So before we go any further, I want to mention our show sponsor, Masonic Revival. Masonic Revival is a wonderful new company headed up by past master Edgar Alejandro. He has put together some really cool designs, including this new line of Forget-Me-Not ties, as well as a new watch called the Regal, which just came out. And if you're really cool and you're lucky enough, you'll get to see a really neat couple reviews coming up here. We're going to do some video reviews of some neat products, and we're going to check them out on the YouTube channel. It should be pretty cool. Do him a favor and follow him on Instagram. It's pretty cool because you'll get to see the picture of the brand new lapel pins that we are offering. It's really cool. So we're really grateful to Masonic Revival for sponsoring us the way they have. And again, please check out MasonicRevival.com. Now, if you're into those pins, head on over to WCYpodcast.com and check them out. Moving on with the show. In the news, we had a really great episode about King Solomon's Temple last week on the Masonic Roundtable. I hope you guys caught it. It was a really great episode. Had a lot of fun. All right, so what I think I want to do here is jump into this first thing called Masonry as portrayed on the World Wide Web. Of course, I think that title again dates the article pretty well. It's from volume number 14 of the Illinois Lodge of Research on page 10, and it reads as follows. Masonry as portrayed on the World Wide Web by Jesse L. John Sr. Today, information about Freemasonry is spread by the internet. While we realize material presented on the World Wide Web may be in error, biased, half-truths, or simply a lie, discernment by the readers can be absent. Many people accept what is written as fact without knowing the motive of the author. These authors, who otherwise would never be noticed, suddenly imagine themselves as masters of an information domain in which they are free to express their idiosyncratic views in any manner they please. Another paranoia is that far too many people imagine that particular groups are secretly plotting against them. They seek answers in evangelistic religions or in the imagined security of like-minded people in militias or anti-this or that groups. They band together using religious exhortations or political fervor in hopes that they will not fall for the evils of the false beliefs and doctrines. I found a website called educateyourself.org that puts forth an article entitled Freemasonry is not a Christian occult religion. The site begins by giving a brief and very biased introduction into what Freemasonry is and soon states that Freemasonry is not compatible with Christianity. A partial list of Christian denominations that condemn Masonry is included for the reader. To name a few, Methodist Church of England, Wesleyan Methodist Church, Assemblies of God, Church of the Nazarene, Roman Catholic Church, and the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The article ends with, quote, if you are a Mason, you need to make a choice. You cannot be both Christian and a Mason. If you don't believe that, check out the references below. These are written by Christians and others who have investigated Masonry. They present supporting excerpts from official Masonic documents and references. 7 suggested websites follow for the reader to visit to gather more information. It is within this context that so many people today find out about Freemasonry, seeing websites ominously filled with seemingly supported claims of devil worship or world domination. They wonder if this group of older men, whom they happen to notice going in and coming out of an old building, are really who they seem to be. The motives of anti-Masonic groups or individuals are sometimes very obvious, such as the sale of books, These books are published by quote-unquote vanity publishers who may be anti-Masons themselves. These books are not published by mainstream publishing houses because their writings fail to meet the standards of research required by traditional publishers. These authors claim that they cannot get their writings published through legitimate publishers because traditional publishers are controlled by Masons. Sometimes anti-Masons' motives are more hidden due to their concept of an imagined quote-unquote New World Order that Masonry has been labeled with, and that destroying Masonry will offer them a form of redemption. They believe that Masonry is a hidden satanic cult from the Dark Ages, and they attempt to use known ritual signs and symbols to prove their belief. Another belief is that Masonry consists of two organizations, the quote-unquote one visible and one invisible. The invisible fraternity is about 5% of the total of all Masons, which means that 95% of the membership is unaware of the inner secret cadre. Most of the books of Albert Pike and Manly Palmer speak of the invisible fraternity. They believe this quote-unquote invisible fraternity is satanic to the core and that they are striving to produce a New Age movement, or the Antichrist. The organization within an organization is composed mostly of 32nd and 33rd degree Masons. These quote-unquote invisible Masons lie to the rest of the order to mislead them with false interpretations while they know the truth about their satanic worship. The invisible Masons are supposedly in a world struggle for world domination through the Antichrist. Another belief of anti-Masons is that the words, names, symbols, and the rectangular lodge room can be traced to satanic worship basically of the Egyptian culture. Some of these are the pyramid, the all-seeing eye, the square and compasses, the pillars, the obelisk, the point within the circle, sun, moon, and all passwords, the layout of Washington, D.C., and the words and symbols on the dollar bill. Each one of these subjects could be a complete paper on how and why these anti-Masonic groups or individuals justify their beliefs that Masonry is satanic worship by the invisible, while the majority of Masons are given a Christian explanation of all these signs and symbols in order for the invisible or elite to be hidden by the visible or masses. One website promoting this type of anti-Masonic information is cuttingedge.org. There, I found a 5-page quote-unquote proof-positive article titled "Symbols Prove Invisible Fraternity of Freemasons is Satanic!" The first sentence sets the mood for what is to follow. Quote, "Since pictures are worth 1,000 words, we have created an article in which we show you that Freemasonry utilizes many of the identical symbols as does hardcore Satanism. The chances of these many common symbols being used accidentally is so high as to be improbable." End quote. The writer goes on to say that he will be quoting from both a satanic source and a Freemason, usually an elite fraternity Mason, to explain the interpretations of the symbols. As you read on, he provides drawings of common symbols he maintains are used by both Satanism and Freemasonry, as well as information detailing the use and connecting Satanism and Freemasonry. The anti-Masonic groups love to use the writings of various men having Masonic affiliation. Some of the most quoted are Albert Pike in his book Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Manly P. Hall, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, Malcolm Duncan's Ritual of Freemasonry, D. Duane Winters' A Search for Light in the Place of Darkness, A Study of Freemasonry, Bishop Charles W. Ledbetter, Freemasonry and its Ancient Mystic Rites and Hidden Life of Freemasonry. Once the anti-Masonic website www.conspiracyarchive.com featured an article titled "Freemasonry, Midwife to an Occult Empire" by Terry Melanson. Contained in this 20-page rambling is an introduction by Mr. Melanson, which states in part, quote, "Historically, Freemasonry has been charged with corruption of public officials because of the oaths and promises they swear to keep amongst themselves, above all else. At the very least, joining a secret society or society with secrets creates glaring conflict of interest." He continues with saying that, quote, "My only intention here is to outline the occult nature of the organization, Masonry," end quote. Included as proof of his findings of Masonry being an occult satanic organization are quotes taken directly from Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma along with the page numbers for reference. Additionally, he quotes Manly P. Hall and includes a who's who list of 19th and 20th century occultism, which, of course, serves to be proof positive from various authors that Masonry is based on satanic rites from ancient times. Listed here to name a few are Aleister Crowley, who he calls the most controversial occultist in modern times, dubbed the quote-unquote wickedest man alive; Samuel L. McGregor Mathers, a Freemason, a Rosicrucian, and an adept occult magician, Bishop Charles W. Ledbetter, a Freemason, a prolific author and teacher on occult subjects and Masonic history, and Gerald B. Gardner, who was a Freemason, an English hereditary witch, and largely responsible for reviving witchcraft in the modern Western world. Cutting Edge Ministry, cuttingedge.org, also got into the act with a 9-page article, Masonry Proven Conclusively to be Worship of Lucifer, Satan. By way of the introduction, you are told, quote, "Now, from their own words and symbols, Freemasonry is proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to be satanic to the core!" Exclamation point. You can be deceived no longer, end quote. Many quotes taken from Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma and Manly P. Hall's The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, or The Secret of Hiram Abiff, help to make up that great portion of the article. On page 8, you are told that Freemasonry is one of the most wicked and terrible organizations upon the earth. The Masons are major players in the struggle for world domination. The 33rd degree is split into two. One split contains the core of the Luciferian Illuminati, and the other contains those who have no knowledge of it whatsoever. As we have demonstrated, Freemasonry is quote-unquote identical to the mysteries, end quote. Therefore, Masonry is identical to the Egyptian gods, from which the God of the Bible freed the Israelites, and identical to the gods of the Amorites against whom Joshua was railing. Anti-Masons will use any convenient argument to support their position. Despite the passage of decades or even centuries, they'll readily apply 1990s standards to those in the 1770s or 1850s. Did George Washington own slaves? Then obviously. So the argument goes, he wasn't a very good Mason. It's convenient to use the political correctness of today to condemn Masonry as practiced many years ago. One very common tactic used by anti-Masons is to put forth a straw man, one who claims to have quote-unquote seen the light and now can explain to the world from the inside perspective the many supposed problems with Masons and Masonry. Most of these are readily seen as a total fraud. The supposed former Mason, who is now a minister, but is apparently too embarrassed to reveal his denominational affiliation, or the person who claims to be a quote-unquote high-ranking Mason who will reveal all. To the unknowing, however, these pretenders are sometimes difficult to discern and can be very persuasive. The Cutting Edge, cuttingedge.org, supplies just such a straw man. The title of a document, Testimony of a Former Freemason Chaplain, Why He Had to Leave Masonry, immediately draws in the novice reader. A subtitle follows. A former Freemason chaplain seeks to demit from a Masonic fraternity and details his reasons for getting out. You will discover the truth, especially the spiritual truth about Freemasonry, from his testimony. The man's identity is soon revealed. He is a Reverend Harmon R. Taylor, who served as Grand Chaplain of the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of New York from 1983 to 1984. The disclosure is basically a letter to Dear Servant of God, wherein there are quotes from Albert Mackey's A Lexicon of Freemasonry, Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, J.S.M. Ward, a Masonic authority who has written several important books on Masonry, Frank C. Higgins, a High Mason, and Joseph Ford Newton, who wrote an article entitled The Bible and Masonry. Broadly classified, I feel that those who oppose Freemasonry today will generally fall into one or more of these four groups: religious intolerance, conspiracy theorists, hate groups, and self-servers. All of these groups are widely represented on anti-Masonry sites on the World Wide Web, and they diligently strive to provide the reader with as much quote-unquote proof-positive information against Masons as one can find the time and stamina to wade through. While most of the information available on these sites is biased and containing only half-truths, there will be many who accept what is presented as the absolute truth and, in return, will help to perpetuate the negative Masonic image. Religious intolerants use their religious beliefs to argue that Masons and Masonry are evil. Their understanding or misunderstanding of beliefs is often in conflict with many mainstream religious groups. By far, the most vocal opposition to Freemasonry comes from those who believe that they do so in support of their religious beliefs, believing themselves to be divinely inspired, they broach no dissent, and will argue with vehemence that they've been led by God or Jesus, as is often the case, to condemn Freemasonry. In addition, the vast majority have no post-high school education and have worked at marginal and or non-executive jobs. They seem to have limited their reading to religious texts in agreement with their worldview, immediately rejecting the ideas of those with whom they disagree. They tend to rely on what others have said, written, rather than objectively looking at facts. Most religious intolerants do not belong to a mainstream religious group and are unwilling to publicly identify their church affiliation. BibleBelievers.org is a religiously intolerant website. I found an article entitled, quote, "A Pastor and Freemasonry, What's a Pastor to Do?" End quote. It was written by Harmon R. Taylor. Remember him? The former Grand Chaplain of the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of New York from 1983 to 1984. He begins by stating that his writing this article as pastor and as a former Mason. He says, quote, "Pastors need to consider the relationship of their church, their ministry, and their flock relative to Freemasonry." End quote. The article's sole purpose is to encourage other pastors to renounce Freemasonry. They are asked to proclaim from their pulpits the dangers of the double walk of a Christian in Freemasonry. Conspiracy theorists are convinced there is a huge evil worldwide conspiracy afoot. Many believe that Masons are involved in this conspiracy or perhaps even leading it. Some argue that it's only the higher degree or elite Masons who are involved. Hate groups can be either a group or a single individual who exhibits rage and hatred far more than the simple animosity toward other groups or individuals. Freemasonry is sometimes the object of their passion. Anti-Semites see Freemasonry having members of the Jewish faith and will rail against it. White supremacists will find Masonic members who are black and thus hate all Masons. Those who hate will also jump at the opportunity to find a conspiracy of some sort supposedly hidden in the fantasized secrecy of Freemasonry. Self-servers have seen the opportunity to make money, gain attention, or both. Their primary motivation is their own self-interests. They will use any argument for attention and will rail against Freemasonry, often using the arguments of the religious intolerant or the conspiracy theorist in order to further their personal goals. When their quote-unquote revelations are shown as foolishness, they feel justified in joining those who hate Masonry. The only way to curb this negativity is to provide more positive Masonic information on the World Wide Web. The true story of Masonry must be heard around the world. We simply cannot afford to sit quietly any longer while the vocal opposition to Freemasonry misrepresents and maligns not only the fraternity but all of us who are proud to call ourselves Freemasons. That's it on that paper. Now, it was really interesting, right? This is, of course, a paper that is showing the dark side of Masonry on the web, and what we have today is largely the opposite. So I think we're doing an okay job. With that, let's go into this week's Masonic Minute with illustrious brother Stephen L. Harrison.
A while back, I was surfing through Facebook when I came upon a post from Robert Johnson, the host of this podcast. In it, he said, "I heard a lodge recently bragging that they do all their own degree work. I didn't know it was a thing to have other lodges come do your work. So for the record, the lodges in Waukegan also do all their own work. Well, so does mine. But while my lodge, Liberty 31 in Missouri, also does its own degree work, in my area it's not uncommon to have other lodges do courtesy work, especially for the smaller lodges. It may not be the ideal situation, but it's sometimes necessary." Brother Robert's observation brought to mind an evening when another lodge in my area asked my own lodge to perform a third degree. We couldn't fit it into our schedule, so we punted it over to the local study club, which had an upcoming meeting at Liberty. So instead of study club, we held a called meeting. As we were preparing to begin, a brother from out of state walked in, said he had seen our outside light was on, and decided to attend. With the study club members present, we had the luxury of putting the best of the best in each position. I was the chaplain that evening. I suppose I belonged in that esteemed group only because the chaplain's job is to watch the entire degree and then, near the end, not screw things up. Fact is, with that team in place, we simply performed the most amazing degree I have ever seen. Everyone knew their parts, everyone hit their marks, it went off like clockwork. At the end of the evening, we went around the room for the requisite introductions and remarks. When our out-of-town visitor stood up, he let us know he was, in no uncertain terms, astounded by the quality of the work. He went so far as to say it put his own jurisdiction's work to shame. I don't know if anyone ever told him our little secret. We brought the A-team that night and hit one out of the park. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
Okay, always a great segment with illustrious brother Stephen L. Harrison. Always look forward to those. I actually meant to put that piece in last week's episode. Just a little bit of news. University Masonic Lodge Foundation and the University Masonic Lodge number 1190 AF and AM presents the 8th Annual Festive Board benefiting the University Masonic Charitable Foundation. What's this have to do with anything? Well, I'm the guest speaker, so I'll be presenting the word myth, legend, and science. There's going to be a social hour and a silent auction at 6 p.m. Dinner served at 7 p.m. at the Austin Club, which is at 110 East 9th Street in Austin, Texas. There's free parking, always a plus. You can purchase the tickets right on their website. The individual tickets includes the meal and beverage. Those are $100. The sponsorship opportunities, which I highly encourage, are the donation of $300, $500, and $1,000. $300 donation includes one ticket to the festive board. The $500 includes 2 tickets to the festive board, and the $1,000 includes 3 tickets to the festive board. What does the money go toward? It is improving the human condition through education, charity, and respect. That particular board is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated primarily to supporting organizations whose purpose is to help improve the lives of children in Central Texas. The UMCF supports the Austin Children's Shelter, the Scottish Rite Dyslexia Center, Stephen F. Austin and Teddy Roosevelt DMLA chapters, Anthropos Arts, and the UT Elementary School Library Fund. So this is very charitable. It's an amazing event, and this is the 8th year they've put it on, and it's been immensely successful, and I couldn't be more proud to help raise the funds that they're looking to raise. So if you can get on there to donate, perhaps you are not going to be in the Austin area, but you still want to donate, please contact them and see what you can do. The day of the event, I'll be selling pins there, and 50% of all the money we raise from every pin that we sell at the event is going right back into those charities as well. So it's going to be pretty cool. Again, a little bit about the presentation. Throughout history, man has searched for truth. Ancient religions, cults, and societies have been obsessed with the idea of the Word, the Tetragrammaton, the true name of God, and the search has spawned numerous philosophical and theosophical ideologies. What is the true name? What is the secret? Is there a power associated with the Word? This is what I'm going to explore. We're going to talk about the mystery, the lore, and even the science behind such an idea in this presentation. Some of you out there may have seen bits and pieces, or you may have stuck out the whole presentation I did at the Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge. If you did check that out, awesome. This is actually going to be very much updated. There'll be new information as always. This is a subject and a passion of mine, so I've currently just finished 4 additional books on the subject. So we're going to pack it full of amazing information. So if you can, please do check out the website. I have links to it on wcypodcast.com, and you can also check it out at universitylodge.org. Next little piece of news I've got is Brother Aaron Hughes. So we talked a little bit about the haunted Masonry episode just a little while ago, and I got this email. So check this out. I cleared it with Brother Aaron Hughes, and he said, go ahead, read it. He says, Brother Robert, I have reached out to you twice so far. Both times you've been amazing and a useful resource. Well, thank you very much. He says, once was to help him locate his great-grandfather's Masonic history, and the other was to confirm another relative's lack of Masonic connections. He says, I greatly appreciate your help in both matters. On his way to Lodge, he said, "I like to listen to the podcast, and I was 2 episodes behind, so I had one for the way to Lodge and one on the way back. While listening to episode 268, you started to talk about a haunted lodge in Seattle, and my ears perked up. I moved from Illinois to Seattle a few years ago and joined my local lodge, and when you said Queen Anne Lodge 242, I was stunned. That's the lodge I joined, was initiated, passed, and raised, and am now the junior deacon of. After hearing your story, I talked with past Master Eric Voigt, who was there that night. The story was not only true, but we have Brother George Milstead's portrait hanging in the west above the junior deacon's chair. It was slightly eerier that night, knowing he was above me during Lodge. I mentioned the story during our stated meeting and heard some new information about Brother Milstead that you may be interested in. He said George actually passed away in 1949 and was past master of our lodge. The story you read on your show is 100% true, but the information about George was incorrect. He had a great-grandson contact our lodge because he knew him to be a Mason and was one of our charter members. He learned that he had lived well beyond what our initial findings had suggested. So while the legend isn't entirely factual, what happened that night was. Thanks for all your hard work on the show. If you ever make it this way to Seattle, we'd love to have you in the lodge. Well, I'd love to be there. Thank you so much for this updated information. I just found it fascinating. Huge thanks to Brother Aaron Hughes. So this next piece I have is a little bit interesting, and it's not really a piece. I'm not going to really read the whole thing, maybe just skim it. But in that same volume of the Illinois Lodge of Research, there's an article in here written by one of my favorite guys, Brother Paul Sheeler, who was with the Grand Lodge of Illinois and is now out in New York City. Brother Paul can be found on Twitter at that Masonic History Guy. Great dude to follow, publishes some really cool stuff, and he is known for checking out eBay and all these places and picking up items and writing up histories, and he even helped out with some Masonic Sotheby's auctions, so it's pretty cool. But anyway, Brother Paul Sheeler wrote this piece, and this is from the 2009. And what's interesting is the title of the article is Illinois Lodge of Research Acquires State-of-the-Art Book Scanner. This is one of these book scanners that you can actually put a book in and scan it and put them online. You know, we've got countless really amazing Masonic texts out there, both occult and historical, that are just brilliant and are super rare. I'm reading this thinking, this is so great, but this happened in 2009 and it's 2016, and I can tell you not a lot happened with this. It's pretty lackluster, and it's not at the fault of Brother Paul Sheeler by any means. Brother Paul has been instrumental in everything he's been doing. Rather, it's just what happens. We acquire these things, and we need men to take the helm and get in there and do the work. And without that, unfortunately, we probably have this scanner that's just sitting around. I don't know. Maybe there's a brother out there who has done the scanning. Maybe he has put those files up somewhere, but I haven't seen them anywhere. So it goes to the ether. Where is this? So I do know that the Illinois Lodge of Research is heading up a new website. It's going to be great eventually. Really looking forward to it. Brother Jim Tome is the Grand High Priest for the state of Illinois. He's also the Worshipful Master of the Illinois Lodge of Research. So I do know that Brother Jim Tome has been really instrumental in the progressive ideas and great membership ideas, new website, all these things with the Grand Chapter, which I think was started a couple of years ago actually by Brother Bill Hussey, followed up by Sean McBride, and now Jim Tome. So there's been some really cool leaps and bounds there as far as education and recognition go for members. So I'm looking forward to see maybe what happens with this state-of-the-art book scanner. Maybe I'll reach out, maybe we can figure something out, and if there's a book out there that we haven't scanned, let's get them scanned, and if we have scanned them, maybe we just get them up online. But just thought it was interesting. You know, this 2009 edition that I'm reading from is also where the World Wide Web article came from. I gave air quotes as I was saying that for whatever reason. But just that terminology is kind of old, right? But let's see what happens. And then just wanted to mention what a kind of an interesting surprise. So usually the Northern Light, which is the Northern Masonic Jurisdiction Scottish Rite magazine, for me is a little bit reading that I'm not real into. It's usually just a little bit of history on an artifact or the charities of the Almoners Fund. But they had a really interesting article in here. So if you did pick it up, don't just set it aside. They had an article called The Shortest Day by Alan E. Folds, 33rd Degree, and it's about the solstice. So it's not as in-depth as you could go, and I'm sure illustrious Brother Folds has this piece, and I'm sure it's a lot longer, and it was probably edited down for content. But nevertheless, really cool article, and we'll probably be reading this next week or the week after just to kind of get ready for Christmas coming up, right? So the Christmas holidays fall right around the winter solstice. And so there's going to be a little bit of a focus on that esoterically probably and historically, just to have a basic knowledge base for a lot of our members who might not know. There's a real connection between the pagan holidays, the Christian holidays, the Hebrew holidays, as well as the solstice and the Saints John. They are all connected archetypes of kind of the same things at a certain base level. So we will probably explore that a little bit in the weeks to come. With that, I just want to say thank you very much for everybody for coming up and picking up those lapel pins and all of the other items that we have. The extra item, the cufflinks, tie bars, and money clips are selling really fast, and there's only 25 of each of those. 25 cufflink sets, 25 money clips, 25 tie bars. If you are interested in those, I suggest ordering those sooner than later. It's right around the Christmas time, so maybe an early Christmas gift, or put it away in the stocking, or wrap it up for Christmas, or for Hanukkah. It does make a cool little gift. Every package, you're going to get the pins, as well as I write a personal thank you to everybody who orders a pin. So I just want to say thank you so much for everybody, because those sales are actually what drives this program. That and your donations, as well as anytime you shop at any of the links on wcypodcast.com under support the show. So whether you're going to buybankersbest.com, freemasonryart.com, onit.com, any of those, all of the cash that you spend at those places, that's well and good, because you're getting a cool product that you like, and we're getting a 10 or a 20% discount to you. But those same companies send this show back $1 or $2 from the sale, which also helps out. So it's a win-win for everybody. And those sales, those prices, by clicking through our links, it's not like you're going to get jacked up prices to make up for the money they have to send us and your shipping or anything. It's not like that at all. These are the same prices you'd pay if you just went there. So if you're going to shop there, why not just head on through our links there and help us out a little bit, help keep those lights on. We're going to have some great shows over the next few weeks. Again, the Masonic Roundtable's coming up. We're going to have some really cool stuff going forward. We've got some great topics lined up. We're going to pick one for next week shortly. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the Midnight Freemasons. We ran a little bit of a controversial article last Friday, which I'll talk about in a moment. But first, I do have to apologize to Brother Chris Streeper. Brother Chris wrote a great piece, and it was called The New Ghostbusters, and how great of a piece it was. And for whatever reason, when I had uploaded the piece, it only took half of it, and I check these things over, but Chris has got an immaculate record for editing, and I just didn't check it right away. So, my fault. I published half his article, and it sounded like I published just his movie review of Ghostbusters, the new version, and he finally called me out on it after it had been up all day. I'm sure he got home and went, oh my God. So we immediately posted the rest of the article. I hope you guys went back and gave it a second shot, because it is a brilliant, brilliant article talking about the mixture of old and new Masons, and makes this juxtaposed to crossing the streams, if you guys remember in Ghostbusters. Is it good? Is it bad? So it's a great piece, so check that out. And then this controversial piece, in air quotes, that we posted was actually written by illustrious Brother Todd E. Creason, who is known for doing these Mason or not Mason pieces. And this was on Donald J. Trump, President-elect for the next term. And obviously, we all know he's not a Mason, but the article nonetheless was a good read. And I think it was very popular. There was a lot of heated debate on that one, and we weren't trying to be divisive, and I think most people kept their passions circumscribed and within due bounds. So kudos to everybody who did that and all the conversations that we brought. And on a final note, before we close out the show, I just want to dedicate this episode to Brother Joe and Brother Mark. You guys became entered apprentices this weekend, yesterday morning if you're listening on Sunday night, and you guys have been waiting 6 whole months of coming down to the lodge to do this, and you're finally entered apprentices, and we couldn't be happier to spend the time we spent today making you entered apprentices after the months you have been coming down to Lodge to show that you're dedicated. Thanks for being a 10%er, both of you. With that, we're going to close it out. If you need to reach me for anything, you can hit me up at wcypodcast@gmail.com or at admin@wcypodcast.com. You can find us on Google Plus at that same email address. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, so check us out there. Pretty much anywhere you are, this show is also there some way, shape, or form, because why sign up for anything new? We want to be everywhere you are so you don't have to sign up for anything new. I just want to thank everybody for listening this week. I hope you have the most amazing Thanksgiving ever. I know, I could have had a Thanksgiving episode, but let's face it. We've been eating Thanksgiving, marketing, and shopping for the last probably 6 weeks. I'm a little Thanksgivinged out already, and it hasn't even happened. So forgive me for not having a Thanksgiving episode. I will say I am thankful for all of you and the opportunity you have given me to bring this show to you, and to continue to do so well into our 5th year. Can you believe that? 5 years of doing this show weekly. And it wouldn't be possible without the entire WCY team. That's illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison, Brother Matthew Dobrow, Frater O, Worshipful Brother Adam Thayer, Worshipful Brother Bill Hosler, and of course, Brother Toddy Creason and Greg Knott and Mike Shirley, everybody from Midnight Freemasons who's been really inspirational, and also for all of the people out there watching on TMR. Super thankful for you guys, as well as my co-hosts on TMR, John Ruark, Jason Richards, Nick Johnson, and Juan Sepulveda. Nobody keeps me in check like you guys do, besides my wife, and you guys make me push my mental thinking to the next level every week, and for that I thank you guys. With that, so I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Until next week, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.